Cold, wet and exhaustion were constant enemies in the trenches, often more dangerous than enemy fire. Soldiers quickly learned that staying warm was not about comfort, but survival. Before we get into the techniques, make sure you're subscribed to Warfield Prepper Chronicles, like the video, and leave a comment with your favourite overlooked World War I survival detail. This channel exists for people who care about real history and practical knowledge, not surface-level storytelling. Now, let's get straight into how soldiers actually use blankets to survive trench life. Blankets were treated as survival tools, not bedding. World War I soldiers did not think of blankets as something you spread neatly on a bed. A blanket was insulation, wind protection, moisture control, and sometimes even camouflage. Wool army blankets were dense, itchy, heavy when wet, and incredibly effective at retaining heat. Soldiers wrapped themselves in them while standing, sitting or sleeping because trenches rarely allowed full rest. A modern application is to stop thinking of blankets as nighttime-only items. Keep one accessible for wrapping while working, resting or guarding in cold environments. Wool still performs well when damp, unlike most modern synthetics. Layering blankets with clothing trapped heat better than thick uniforms. Uniforms alone were not enough in trench winters. Soldiers layered blankets between their coats and outer layers whenever possible. This created dead air space, which is what actually holds warmth. Some men folded blankets into long panels and wrapped them around the torso under greatcoats. Others draped them over shoulders and pinned them in place. Today, this technique works when stationary in cold conditions. Instead of adding more tight layers, add a loose blanket layer to trap air. This is especially effective in unheated shelters, garages or tents. Ground insulation mattered more than overhead cover. One of the harshest lessons learned was that cold came up from the ground faster than it came down from the air. Soldiers slept on duckboards, straw, sandbags or spare gear, then placed blankets underneath them before covering themselves. Even one folded blanket beneath the body significantly reduced heat loss. For modern use, if you're camping or sheltering without proper insulation, prioritize putting blankets under you before adding more on top. A single wool blanket beneath the torso can outperform multiple layers above when it comes to heat retention. Blankets were turned into makeshift sleeping sacks. In trenches with no room for proper beds, soldiers rolled themselves into blanket cocoons. They folded the blanket lengthwise, lay down, and wrapped the sides tightly around the body, often tucking the ends under themselves to seal drafts. This method reduced exposed surface area and held warmth close to the core. You can apply this technique today in emergency shelters or cold rooms. Rolling into a blanket instead of simply draping it can raise perceived warmth dramatically without additional materials. Shared body heat was planned and intentional. This was not accidental or informal. Soldiers routinely slept shoulder to shoulder or back to back with blankets overlapping between them. The shared warmth conserved energy and reduced shivering, which burns calories. Blankets were arranged to cover gaps between bodies rather than layered individually. For modern survival scenarios, this technique is valuable for families or groups sheltering in cold conditions. One large shared blanket setup can outperform several individual coverings when space is limited. Blankets doubled as wind barriers inside dugouts. Wind moving through trench systems stripped heat fast. Soldiers hung blankets along trench walls, over dugout entrances, or across firing step recesses to block drafts. These barriers did not need to be airtight to work. Simply breaking airflow made a noticeable difference. Today, hanging blankets in doorways, windows, or between rooms in cold buildings can reduce heat loss without tools or construction. This is especially useful during power outages or fuel shortages. Drying and rotating blankets preserved warmth. A wet blanket was heavy and cold, but once dried, it regained its insulating power. Soldiers rotated blankets whenever possible, drying one near a brazier or body heat while using another. Some slept with damp blankets, wrapped inside coats to dry them overnight using body warmth. Modern users can apply this by rotating bedding and drying blankets proactively. Never wait until everything is wet. Keep at least one dry insulating layer reserved for rest periods. Blankets were combined with natural materials for extra insulation. Straw, leaves, grass, and even crumpled paper were stuffed between blanket layers or underneath them. Soldiers understood that these materials increased trapped air. In winter billets and dugouts, straw-filled blanket setups were common. Today, this principle applies in emergency shelters. Adding dry, natural material between blankets or beneath them increases insulation without modern gear. This is basic physics, not improvisation. Blankets served as vapor barriers when used correctly. Sweat was a hidden danger. Soldiers learned to loosen blankets when marching or working, then tighten them immediately when stopping. Staying dry was critical. Trapping sweat caused rapid chilling once movement stopped. Modern survival practice should follow the same rule. Vent when active, seal when resting. A blanket wrapped too tightly during exertion becomes a liability. Replicating trench blanket systems today. To apply these methods now, start with one quality wool blanket. Use it first under your body, then wrap rather than drape it. Block airflow in your shelter using blankets as hanging barriers. Rotate and dry insulation daily. Share warmth when possible. Add loose natural materials to increase trapped air. These are low-tech methods tested under extreme conditions, not theory. WWI soldiers survived months of cold with limited resources because they understood heat management, not comfort. These blanket techniques are still relevant, still effective, and still underappreciated. If this kind of grounded practical history matters to you, subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles, like the video, and share it with someone who values real-world survival knowledge. Leave a comment with the trench detail you want covered next.